Hello, Stephen. How are you doing today?
I'm well, John. Thank you. How are you?
I'm doing well. I'm really excited for this conversation today. Um, what we're going to do is we're going to cover it's really three sections. The first is we all want to find out a little more about Stephen Brown. And the second area that we want to talk about the blog you wrote about how agencies can build back better in 2021. And then finally, there's a few questions that have come in from CMA Next participants, people wanting to get into the industry, very specific questions for their needs. So we'll end off today's session with that.
Wonderful.
But first of all, I really want to start off by embarrassing you. And so here's the embarrassing question. Almost everyone in the marketing community knows you are our inaugural 2019 CMA's Lifetime Achievement Award winner. What's that feel like, and why was the award important to you?
Well, thank you. And again, I appreciate being invited today. It's a wonderful honor. Winning that award last year was pretty unique. It's a mix of emotions, of a little awkward, a little humbling, at the same time, pretty exciting. To be acknowledged by your peers in the industry after, many years of hard work and dedication and stuff like this is great. But I also think is, the way it was given to me and offered or presented to me was acknowledging my commitment to both the advertising and marketing industry, but just also not just from the work I do, but also from giving back.
Yeah.
Which I don't, if I look back on my career, and I've still got lots in front of me, the memories, the moments that are the best are that combination of both. Some of the best campaigns I've worked on, but also the people I've met, whether it's through the CMA or working on other volunteer boards and stuff like that. We've got this skill called marketing and advertising communications, and to be able to use it towards both the good of your clients, but also the good of community was an honor. And that's what you guys called out, which really meant a lot to me.
Yeah,
so honored, I think is the word.
I think that you're not that old, so it might even be a halftime award instead of a lifetime achievement award. But I think that it's certainly well deserved. And I promise that questions from here on in will be less awkward and more businesslike. But certainly, I couldn't think of a better person to be our inaugural winner. So thank you for that. Thank you for representing the marketing and advertising community so well for so many years. I want to talk a little bit more about how you got into the business and leading up to how Fuse Create, your rebranding this year, came together. Can you express how that kind of your trajectory, your pathway into the career of marketing and advertising?
Yeah, for sure. And I'll be dead honest, especially for the people who try to get into this industry. I didn't come in a typical channel. I mean, I don't know if there is a typical channel, maybe university and business school type thing in marketing, but I went to university, got a BA, did well.
Yeah.
But when I finished, I was, trying to figure out where am I going to go? Like, you're getting an education, where are you going to go? And I had the fortune of getting a job in the mailroom at Pepsi at the height of the Cola Wars. And so, when you're trying to figure out what am I going to do, there was this pull, this strength that was happening called the marketing and advertising department, who would beg and borrow from me to stay late and send couriers to England and New York and stuff like this. And they would give me swag and tickets to concerts and stuff like this. And they would invite me to all the summer parties and stuff like this. I'm like, well, this department looks great. They have swag and stuff, and they have concerts and parties. So I went into marketing from there. So I finished the university, did my 1-year post degree at a college, got into advertising, the agency side, which I loved, heavy on the data and digital, and then eventually digital. And I did agency work for 11 years, at one of them being quite large, part of the WPP network at Wonderman, and then went to Mosaic and stuff. Anyway, 11 years of agency work. We were at an agency that was having some troubles, and they were restructuring, and so they were doing some bankruptcy protection work. Huge company, nothing to do with the work we were doing. That led to us being terminated, and us being my business partner today of 17 years, almost 18 years, Gar Karasifji. And we took that opportunity to, instead of just saying, oh, we're losing our job, as the phoenix rises out of the ashes example, we realized we had some clients who really liked working with us.
Yeah.
And so we sort of rolled the dice, started up an agency, and kept a big bank and kept a big CPG. And we're able to get work on day one of our new agency. We kept 15 people, started small, but that's pretty big in a startup mode. And that was in 2003, in January of 2003. So
Okay.
18 years this January. And it's been an amazing ride. But so I was 35 at the time. I didn't know anything about being running a business from the holistic side of things. I knew how I was a good account person, good with clients, loved the business. But I guess the best way to summarize it is I took a unique, slightly awkward, very nerve-wracking experience of a company having some struggles, and we turned that into an amazing positive.
Yeah, that's great. And, you know, I think that a couple of things interesting. One is, you know, there's still some really great Canadian-made success stories in the creative community. I think that's amazing. I think it's also living that life of an entrepreneur really helps you to understand the stresses that entrepreneurs, smaller business and medium-sized business, just that kind of the risk aspect of running a business. And I think that probably makes you a better communicator, a better advisor to those who need it. You know, I want to talk a little bit about the pandemic. I know everyone's really sick of talking about the pandemic. You know, if I am so tired of the news cycle, it really, it's boring me to death, even while we're glued to it to find out new information. For me, it was like being a little bit in a crucible. And in that way that we were, somehow our character was tested, our perseverance was tested. What did you learn about yourself and your agency?
Yeah, you know, and I think I share your opinion where I've heard enough about it. I also am pretty optimistic about that we've turned a big corner and brighter days are ahead. Yeah. You know, the few things I learned about myself personally is I'm meant to work in person with a team. I've been effective working at home. Where I'm at the office today because we're open for a small amount of people.
Right.
But no, I meant to work with a team in an office or at least in a collaborative space. So I'm not a fan of the working from home, but we've been doing it well, and the whole agency's been doing it well. But for me, I'm in this business because of people. So that I struggled. I won't deny that. I think as a leader, I really needed to learn to, and it's not natural for me, probably for many people, but I needed to, especially in the earlier stages, and then it came back with the second wave, is you need to be comfortable addressing openly people's fears and vulnerabilities in something that's well beyond all of our control.
Right.
So normally as a leader, you're expected to answer, here's the problem with what we're dealing with, or here's the client issue, or here's the creative issue. We had to get into spaces that I'm not so used to, which is, are you having personal problems? Are you having vulnerabilities? Are you feeling lonely and isolated? How are we helping you? And I that's not my natural way, but I had to do it. And then on top of that, I really had to get comfortable with over communicating.
Yes.
And I talk a bit about this in a blog, which we'll talk about, but if I say it once, I often think that I've said it once, everyone got it and they understand it. And nothing is normal about this, as we know. So really about repeating, explaining more, explaining why, taking the time, listening to the questions, and then repeat. Like we had a path to get through this. Well, we built a path. We hoped it would work. It is working. But you need to sort of explain that, because people when vulnerable or scared, will always often go to the worst scenario, and we weren't going there. We had to keep people away from there.
Yeah, that's great. So thanks for that. So I do want to talk a little bit about, unpack your blog, you know, how agencies can build back better in 2021. It's a very descriptive, well communicated title. You know what it's talking about. You know, a good blog always has a little bit of tension in it. Where do you think the tension is in this blog? Where's the right place for an argument in this blog? Where might someone take a different view?
You know, I think as agencies, we often, well, especially in the last while, we've often looked for a solution to being some of our problems, like a new technology or a new
Yeah.
approach or a new shiny object as well. And truthfully, I talk about everything that we do is based on our culture.
Yeah.
And there are agencies who are really figuring out their culture and how to manage that. And there are agencies who I think are really struggling with culture. And the reality is I cannot get the best, like my clients come to Fuse Create for great ideas, great insights, great creativity. I'm not going to get that from people if the culture is bad or the culture is broken. And so we often want to find a solution to things, which is beyond that. But your first and foremost needs to be, you need to provide a path for your team to connect, engage, and build. And that's hard during COVID, but we've done it during COVID.
Yeah.
And we've had to do extra things to make it facilitate and make it better during COVID. And so one of my biggest fear is we can't lose that when we're out of COVID, because we will be out of COVID. And I would also say that if you're building your agency based on a financial model, you're really going to shoot yourself in the foot on trying to create that culture. I'm not saying financials don't matter, they totally matter.
Yeah.
But if you're looking at a headcount ratio as your main driving purpose in a quarter, which was easy to get caught up in COVID, you've taken your eye off the bigger picture, which is I need to keep this team engaged, motivated, which will keep my clients engaged, motivated, which will keep the client spending money with me. And I don't do
that's great. You know, I think that's great. I mean, we've often been told not to be so internally focused, be externally focused, but it's also important to be internally focused because your brand is your people and the processes and the way they work together, for sure. Do brands need agencies nowadays?
Yes. And I'm not saying that just from a self-serving perspective. But I've had these incredibly frank conversations with my clients about the balance between in-house and agencies and the right mix of agencies and stuff, various things like this. Listen, I don't ever tell my client, how to make a better piece of bread or a loaf of bread or how to make a better mortgage or a credit card. What I do tell them, and when I say I am reflecting the whole we of Fuse Create and all agencies, if they're doing a good job, I do tell them about things that I think they sometimes struggle with because they're not designed to do that. First and foremost is that unbiased approach. When I tell them, I don't look at the product like it's my product. I look at it as my client's product. And I think sometimes you can get into this phase of, you can get into drinking your own Kool-Aid. Right. And so clients can get quite, of course they're going to like this. And our job as an agency is to actually tap into the consumer or the customer and find out what is it that's floating to the surface and what's not, and help them that prioritize. And then I'd say, we've seen enough examples where in an agency, an in-house agency struggles with that. The person who's giving you direct feedback is also your boss. And having that once removed from an agency, I'm not saying it's easy for us, and we do get it. You get in healthy debates, sometimes fights, but it is a bit easier for a CMO and a senior lead in an agency to have a fight about a creative component or a tension, a strategic tension, or whatever the example is, without fear of losing your job. And that's the balance where it really helps keep the product and the connection with the consumer honest. And finally, I would say our agencies are designed for creativity. And a lot of clients, marketing departments have to be creative. But what is the definition of creativity, and how does that manifest itself? That is our business. And
I want to talk a little bit.
I think it's easy. It's not easy to replicate. So.
Yeah, I want to dig down a teeny bit on creativity in a minute. But I do agree with you that the whole notion of working with an agency on a creative approach, that independence, that ability to have those strong arguments. As a brand leader myself, you have to troll through some pretty awful ideas sometimes to get to the one that really sings. And I think it is important to have someone putting some pressure on the other side of the argument. Let's talk about creativity, though. I actually think there's a value there's a quantifiable value in creativity. Do you agree?
Oh yeah, I agree, and I would say that you should be having, well, as any seasoned marketer and advertising professional knows, there's ways of connecting the response, the result of good creativity. So whether that's through sales lift or brand tracking or clicks, like there's all sorts of different ways. It doesn't mean it has to be always anchored in that, because a lot of the stuff we do is over time and cumulative. But no, flat out, the power of good. If you look at the top selling brands right now, it is a combination of the product or service, but the creativity around it also. And creativity is everything from package design through to how you're presenting your brand and how your image is coming through. So, and if you look at some of the top brands, there's an energy, there's an emotion behind them, and that's all developed through the creative process. And it's all encompassing. It doesn't mean this is just the agency's job. This is everyone's job. But creativity is huge. And if anything, I've learned from some amazing design people in my career, just the power of design and how that infiltrates everything we do. That's the difference between brands that can grow to huge amounts.
Yeah, one of my cores is finance, and I've always thought of creativity as lowering the costs of having the same result. You know, and you know, I think there's some truth to that, in that, yeah, if you got unlimited funds, you can get your message across with terrible creative, but you know, if you want to do it within a budget, you're best off really trying to find a way that you know, provokes people into rational thought.
And we don't need budgets. We need budgets, don't get me wrong, but yeah. I think we've learned through the digital transformation of what we've been in, is that great creativity doesn't always have to translate into a multi-million-dollar budget. Great creativity can start from one idea that's beautifully packaged and disseminated in all sorts of different ways. Great creativity can be a small independent 2-person company or a 40,000 person company.
Yeah, no, that's good. You talked about this already, but I wanted to reinforce it, just to your point that sometimes you have to say it over again. What did you learn about effective leadership during the last year?
Well, I hope if anyone from Fuse Create listens to this, they don't disagree.
Yeah, you're on the spot.
You know, I think so much of what a leader needs to do is listen, and all people struggle with this concept of listening, like truly active listening. Because I find sometimes we rush to how do I fix the problem? State the problem, how do I fix it? And the reality is often it's a chance for people, the team just wants to be heard. And out of listening, you find out, usually you uncover what the true issue is. So someone comes in and says, this is my problem. But if you go right as a leader, right to the, I got to fix that problem, you've probably missed the actual undercurrent of reality, what they're talking about.
Yeah.
And so I've really found this year is I had to be comfortable listening. I had to be comfortable being vulnerable to listening, because I wasn't dealing with the typical things. I was dealing with business struggles that were totally living or floating on vulnerabilities and insecurities and fear. And so I had to do two things. I had to look at the problem, the traditional problem, and understand the other one below. So for me, it's been about listening, empathizing, you still need to be decisive. And then going back to what I said earlier is, and you have to over communicate and deliver type thing.
Okay.
So it hasn't been an easy one. I would say, I think this is inherent, what I just said, but show up and be present is one of the biggest things. So the examples I think sometimes people think, oh, I'm a leader, I'm too busy to show up to whatever that the team is doing. I mean, my team's 75 people. It's not like it's 7,000 people, but it's still a good size. Be there, be engaged, show up.
Perfect, thank you. I want to switch to CMA Next, and again, welcome to those who are either listening live right now or I've pulled this up through the CMA Next portal. You know, when I think about, you know, thousands of years ago when I was coming out of university, some of the most profound things that I've carried with me from university and things I learned in the first couple of years is around paradigms, models for thinking, problem solving. Is there a couple of concepts or truths that you learned early that you've kept with you, helped you to become successful?
Yes, I would say less on the functional side of marketing. Like, I know how to write a brand plan. I know how to write a data. I understand the data side of looking at math groups of customers. And there's a lot of learned stuff that I could explain there. But for me, to grow into leadership roles and to keep advancing, I would say that the patterns that I kept coming back to are, one is your personal brand is incredibly important. So if you're going to leave a job, which is normal to do, make sure you're leaving it without burning any bridges. Always keep your social profile current, up to date. Let your personality shine to a degree, all that type of stuff. I would also say the other big one I've learned is that in this industry, I think probably like most industries, the relationships that you build are pretty much everything. It's not everything, but a huge component of what you do. So that means, I always say this to young people coming in, get away from your screen. Like, don't just, it's not just about networking on LinkedIn, although that's wonderful. It is about going out and being seen at shows, at awards, at events. Within your own company, you have to build your profile and build relationships. Those relationships follow you around. And if you've built your brand well and you've built relationships well, when you're at my age, a lot of people start to come back to you, and that's that cycle. And so I'd say that, and then
that's interesting.
And then finally, I would say is I don't profess to be the smartest person in the room or know more than anybody. I'd really depend on my team, and make sure you're comfortable hiring people who are easily going to replace you or challenge you. I think we struggle with that.
Incredibly important and difficult sometimes to do.
Yeah.
Let's finish off. We got a couple more minutes left. I'm really interested in, I mean, between you and I, we've probably interviewed hundreds and hundreds of people in our careers for various roles. And it's really part of a leader's job is to recruit and look for talent. Mm-hmm. Are there some attributes that you find yourself consistently looking for when you're interviewing a new candidate for a job?
Yes. And I would say they're even more important when you're just starting off and trying to get in, but I look for these all the way through. Yeah. I always look at, there needs to be a definite curiosity, passion for why do you want to be, for me, why do you want to be in marketing? Why do you want to be in advertising? Why do you want to work on an agency? And so I just showing up for an interview is not going to get you there. I need to see you're hungry and curious for this. We often use, Steve Miller, our executive creative director, often uses the term possibilitarian. And that cult, you just got to be able to see the possibilities, and it has to be embedded in you. And it's hard to find these people. And I'm not saying all companies need this type of person, but we survive as an independent agency. We survive by looking at where are there opportunities, and I need the whole team doing that. It's not my job, that's our whole job. And so finding people who are like, wow, there's clients ask me to do this, but I see more opportunities for them. How do we have that dialogue and go back to them and talk to those things? And that's how you build strength and rapport with your clients. That's how the creative team keeps motivated, and how the strategists can keep looking for opportunities. And but that doesn't come, you don't tell someone, okay, finish with this and then look for 2 more things. That has to be embedded in just how your DNA works. Yeah. And that's that hunger, that passion, that excitement. Yeah. I cannot make that, I can't tell someone to be that way, but I can try. Some guarantees it always works, but I can try to find that when I'm asking people questions, when I'm engaging with them, when I'm asking them things like, tell me a campaign that really motivates you right now. Yeah. And I need to see that they're in this not for the job, but for a career. Yeah.
That's great. Wonderful. Well, thanks so much for your time today. I think it's a real blessing for us to hear from you, to get the value of your insight, your experience, and I wish Fuse Create all the best success in 2021. I really enjoyed this conversation. Thank you, Stephen.
Thank you very much, John, and thank you to the CMA.